Hello everyone, Friday, September the 15th, and this is the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows. It follows the triumph of the cross. So we realize, of course, with the cross, finding of the cross, this instrument of that God used for our salvation, to have Christ crucified on the cross, overcoming the powers of darkness, the gates of the underworld, that the one who stands at the foot of the cross is the one who teaches us how to unite ourselves to the suffering of Christ for the sake of his body, the church. And that is our Blessed Mother, Mary, who's she's the greatest of all the disciples, the Queen of heaven and earth. The angels venerate her, so why shouldn't we? Should be natural to us. Okay, from the first reading, we go to the Epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 5. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Although he was Son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and having been made perfect, Jesus became the source of eternal salvation for all who obey him. Short reading, that's the entire first reading. But it's a profound mystery here that probably is passed over by a lot of people, because you have to really spend time almost at the feet of this reading, meditating upon it. Although he was Son, he learned obedience through what he suffered, and having been made perfect. But wasn't Jesus perfect? Because he's the second person of the Blessed Trinity, and his human nature was perfect. It had no sin. He never could have sinned. He never did sin, because his human nature, his human soul, saw the beatific vision all the time from his first moment of coming into existence. So what does this mean? Though he was, and having been made perfect. It's a great mystery. That's probably why it's passed over a lot. But the saints, the mystics, they don't pass over this stuff. They spend a lot of time, reflecting on this. So from my recollections, the best way with this short time that we have is that from an experiential point of view, Jesus was made perfect because suffering is something that he had never experienced before. Okay, so he's perfect, he has no sin, but he's never experienced suffering before. Did Jesus learn how to be a carpenter? Yeah, he did. He had experiential knowledge, he had beatific knowledge granted to him because his human soul saw the face of God, because he's the second person of the Blessed Trinity. He had infused knowledge that Adam had. Some of the saints have received this. And this is not me, by the way. This comes from St. Thomas and all these great intellects. And also he had experiential knowledge, which he acquired through his human nature. So he became perfect in the sense that he experienced human suffering, and he was perfectly aligned. He always said, Father, the prayer in Gethsemane, if there's another way, let it be so, but not my will, but thine be done. So in that sense, he became perfect. Okay, so this is how much God loves us, because he doesn't need to do any of this. He does it for you and for me, right? So we need to learn from this. Over to the gospel. Okay, there's two possibilities, St. Luke and St. John. I'll take St. John. Standing near the cross, Mary of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister. And then he says to his mother, Woman, behold your son. Then he says to St. John, behold your mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. And that's really what every disciple should do, is take Mary into their own home, the home of their heart, the castle of their soul, as it were, to take Mary as a guide, the greatest of all guides in the spiritual life. Nobody, no human person, in fact, no angel is more aligned with God's will than the Blessed Mother was. That's why she's Queen of the Angels, right? She's inferior to them in being, but she is far superior in grace. And so that is why they venerate her as queen, as their queen. And they have no problem doing this, so why should you and I have a problem doing it? So she stands at the foot of the cross, and she accepts all of this, even though she's going through terrible pain and suffering, but she accepts this as part of God's will. Did she fully comprehend it? Probably not, but she fully accepted it. And that's something that you and I can learn from, because we won't understand all of our sufferings. None of us will. Certainly, why certain things happen. But what we can pray for is the grace to fully accept it and offer it to Christ and ask Mary to help us as she stood at the cross. It's very clear she stood. She wasn't a swooning individual. She stood at the cross and she accepted God's will because God gave her the grace to do it, and she cooperated with that grace. God will give you and me the grace that we need in order to accept the suffering, small or great, that comes our way. So reach out to Mary, ask her to help you, in your life of discipleship, that she be your mentor. She can be all of our mentors, right? Because that's one of the properties of the resurrected body, the glorified, divinized body. She can be all of our mentors all at once, and it doesn't in any way diminish, her as the person she is now in heaven. God bless you.